Welcome to the Discovering Your Favorite Brushes lesson. We are going to take many different brushes. We're going to test them out. We're going to take some notes on them. So let's see. First up, I wanted to show you, I had this Princeton, the 4050R round number 6. The tip got ruined, just totally ruined. So I actually snipped it off because at the time I didn't have brushes that were very round. They all had a pointed tip. So first thing we're going to do is take our water bottle. We're just gonna weight these watercolors up. We got our extra piece of paper and I'm just painting on the back side of it. And I got my pencil so I can take notes. So this is the, let's just start with this one. This is the Princeton 4050R number 6. So when you start testing out your brushes, what you want is to start with, you can hold your brush up like at a 90-degree angle. And we're going to do like a very thin line, as thin as it can go. This doesn't go that thin because, like I said, I cut off the tip. And we're just gonna press very, very lightly, and then we can press a little bit harder, and then even harder. I'm running out of paint here. Okay, so this is what this brush can do. You can test it by making a leaf. We can make dots. You know, what do the dots look like? What do the very small brush dashes look like? All right, now I'm going to switch to the, let's see, I want to do the Velvet Touch. This is a number 4. Actually, let's just go with the number 6. You can also test out all of the different sizes that you have. Typically when I get a brush, I'll get a few different sizes. This is the Princeton Velvet Touch number 6. All right, this does have a nice point to it. And this, the Princeton brushes, this is the one that has seemed to hold its tip the best. So I can do a very light line, a very tiny, delicate line. Again, put hardly any pressure on it. It's just barely touching the page. And then we can press down a little bit harder. And press down even harder. So that way I'm pressing all the way down here. You can try doing a very thin line, then pressing, and then go back to a thin line, and then press down. This is going to build lots of muscle memory, which is going to make painting a lot easier. Let's just do some little dots. What if we hold it up 90-degree angle? See, we get much more rounder, tinier dots. If I barely touch it, very tiny dots. If I touch it a little bit harder, put a little bit more pressure on it, the dots get bigger. And then we can make a leaf. This is a really good brush to use. And what happens if you kind of use it on its side, you can get a rounder leaf. Round brushes are definitely the most versatile brushes. And then let's go with the Princeton Neptune, number 6. These hold a lot of water. Out of the Princeton brushes I've tried so far, this holds the most water. All right, so I'm gonna make very thin. Again, I'm barely touching the page. Got a hair on it. So make nice, delicate, thin lines. And then we're going to press down a little bit more. And then let's press down more. I'm not pressing down all the way yet. All right, now let's press down all the way. See what happens when we do dots, when we got our brush all the way up, barely touching it. Tiny dots. Now we got bigger dots. What happens when we just make some lines, short little dashes. We can do this. And then let's make a leaf. I'll be teaching how to paint leaves in one of the upcoming lessons. What happens if you do it on the side? These would be great for nice rounded leaves, like eucalyptus leaves. You can even do a two-sided one. See how that's nice and rounded. We can also do very, pointed. Start with a point. You can make nice lines. Right, now I'm going to test out the Silver Black Velvet. This is the number 8. I like the number 8. I did get the number 6, but I like this one better because it's got a wider range. We can get nice and big petals or leaves. Or it can be very, very tiny. These are great brushes. They come to a nice fine point. And these are synthetic brushes. And I'm going to start with a very thin, delicate line and see how thin that is. These brushes here definitely give you a much finer line. And I'm barely touching the page. Now let's touch a little bit more, put a little bit more pressure, and then more pressure, and then more, and then that's pressing it down all the way. These hold a nice large amount of water, so you can really get you can use this for quite a while before you have to reload it. So let's do tiny little dots. Very, very tiny, guys. And a little bit more pressure. Makes larger dots and even more pressure. And you can, you know, just practice making marks. Get to know your brush. Get to know where you like to hold it, more like a pencil. If you hold it more in the middle, you'll have less control, but it'll be more free, you know, movements. If you hold it really up high, you can get a lot of, if you hold it really up high like that, you can get a lot of freedom in your movement. And so we can do a leaf. We'll start with a very thin line, press down. You can do it. And then if we use the side of the brush, we can get that more rounded leaf, a nice fine stem there. So I find these silver black velvet, and then what we'll try next is the Da Vinci quill brush. So the Da Vinci quill size 0, I use this a lot. I'm going to use this in the, mostly use that one in the upcoming lessons. These have a wider range of strokes that you can make. And I'll show you more of that in the leaf lesson. So this Da Vinci is, I think it's squirrel hair. And you can see it holds a lot of water. The belly gets nice and round. The tip gets nice. You get a fine tip at the end so you can make really fine lines. It sucks up water and paint. Just so you know. It sucks up a lot. And then I like to brush it along the side here just to get a little bit off. So this is the Da Vinci quill number 0. So again, we can get super delicate fine lines with this. It comes to a beautiful, beautiful point. And I hold it really close to the end to have more control when I do detail work like this. And we can do tiny dots. Press down more for larger dots. And press down, put a little bit more pressure for a thicker line. And then build up on that pressure for an even thicker line. This has a nice thick line here. And this has a really fluid movement, which is what I love about it. If you test that out between the silver black velvet and the quill, the Da Vinci quill, you definitely feel, I don't know, I guess it's just more fluid. The strokes happen more easily. It's just a really beautiful brush. It's my favorite one of all. And then you can use the side of it to make rounded leaves. It's so perfect to make flower petals as well. And if you can see here the difference between the way the paint is laid down on the Princeton 4050R Velvet Touch and the Neptune, you get a more even paint coverage than you do on these. You see these have a lot of different marks throughout. It's not just a smooth color like you do with this. You do get that more of that with the silver black velvet too, but you get the best smooth coverage with the quill brush. So another brush I like to use is a liner brush. This is a number 1. So So this is the Mimic. It's Creative Mark liner number 1. This is really great for making very fine lines. It is a little bit harder to control. So that's why I hold it very close, you know, and practice holding your brush up right, practice holding it more to the side. So it's so thin, you're not really going to get much it's not a huge variety of marks is what I'm trying to say. But if you can do this, see, this makes a really interesting leaf. So I like to use this mostly to make stems for leaves, flowers, to add detail. So you can go ahead and add some detail to your leaves with these. So it's a really nice brush to have. And then we got the dagger brush. This is a Royal and Langnickel R&L. They don't even have the name of it on it. It's a dagger, 1.4 inches. This is a very, very fun brush if you want to get really loose in your paintings. This is a super fun brush to have. So it's got that nice, so the shape of it is like this, like a dagger. So you got that really nice fine tip. So you can make nice lines with it. And try. It's got an interesting shape for leaves. So if you would, you know, practice holding it different ways. So it's unpredictable, and I love that about it. So when I really want to make some like wild and free, intuitive flowers and leaves, I tend to go to this brush. You can make, you know, you can kind of draw with it because it's got that nice fine tip. So we can do dots with it. And what happens if you, just keep asking, what happens if you just kind of lie it like that? And then I've got my Robert Simmons White Sable number 8. This does hold a really nice amount of water and paint. Any kind of animal hair brush is going to typically hold more. Now, it does not have a fine tip, so it's not going to make a very light, you know, very delicate line. You can hold it like this. This is so nice for making, you know, flower petals. So I want you to notice as you're doing this, is there a brush that feels a little more natural to your hand? I know a lot of artists love these. I've got another one here, a bigger size, size 8, the Princeton Heritage, the 4050R. I've tried them over and over again. I'm not happy with how it holds a tip, and it just doesn't feel great in my hand, which is fine because everybody's hand is different. So again, the ones that I like the best are these. So Silver Black Velvet, the White Sable by Robert Simmons. This dagger brush is super fun. The liner brush and the quill is my all-time favorite. I'm gonna get a couple of smaller sizes too, and I also have a size 1, so that's a little bit bigger. I'd like to actually get some of the larger sizes as well, because when we get to painting our wild and free loose florals later in the coming months, it'll probably be the last half of the year, I like to paint those with really big brushes. So this for me, it took me a while to get used to it because the handle is very, very thin. And so I was used to using, you know, brushes that had a thicker handle on them. But I just kept practicing and practicing, and now it just feels like an extension of my hand. It feels very flowy, and I just love it so much. You know, you can make such different shapes with this one than with the other brushes. So this gets my #1 vote. So I'd love to know what gets your #1 vote, because everybody's different, like I said. So go ahead and experiment. Find the brush that feels the most natural to you in your hand. And we're also going to be experimenting when we make our leaves and fillers and flowers. I would love for you to choose like your top 3 brushes from this little experiment and make the flowers in each of those brushes, because what can happen is certain flowers you're gonna like better in one brush than you do in another. So I might like this quill brush for my roses and most of my leaves and the other flowers we're going to make in this class. But I really love these Princeton Neptune and where is it, the Robert Simmons, when I make some of the more looser flowers that we're going to get into at some later point this year. All right, so that's it for this lesson. Fill up your page, you know, get a couple of pages if you got a million brushes like me, you know. So you want to like test out, you know, round brushes, flat brushes, and because you might find that you like a round brush for a more, you know, specific style of flowers. This makes a very different mark. So you can get a nice fine line, thicker lines. This makes a really nice flower petal shape. So just have some fun, experiment, and take notes. Go back in. Like, I do love this one. This was the oval. Put a little heart there. Going to put a heart next to the quill. That's my favorite. This one's okay. So since this is my favorite, I'm going to give it 2 hearts. This one I like too. My dagger, no, my liner I like. So now with a quick glance, I can see what my favorites are. All right, guys, I will see you in the next lesson where we are going to learn to paint leaves. Have some fun. make lots of pages, practice, practice, practice. This is how painting will become a little bit easier and easier. The more you practice, the more you build up that muscle memory in your hand. And that's how you become the watercolor floral painter that you long to become. All right, guys, I will see you in the next lesson.